I'm camped out near the cinder cone lava beds in Mojave National Preserve. I managed to get a great dispersed campsite right near the base of one of the cinder cones, and I really wanted to make sure I kept that spot. So now I'm walking toward the Mojave Lava Tube. There's a small parking area at the edge of the lava tube trail. Helpful to know if you're nervous like me about parking. It looks like the sand is fairly solid here. The drive in is slightly rough and sandy, but you can probably do it in an SUV. As many people know, I am claustrophobic, so I'm not totally sure how I feel about this experience, but I'm gonna give it a try. Okay, claustrophobic friends, there is this one passage that you have to get through, but it's not too bad. It only takes a few seconds, and then you come out to this wider area, which is okay for me, so it's okay. That was an interesting experience. I am glad I did go into the lava tube despite the initial feelings of claustrophobia. For me, it wasn't that bad because the passage that I had to go through was not too narrow. I mean, I wouldn't have loved it if it continued for longer. I think if it continued for longer, that would have been a problem for me, but it was only really for a few seconds that I was crawling through that narrow space, and then it opened up into the place with the holes and the light beams, so that was cool. I'm glad I did go to see it. There was, however, a scary moment, and not due to the reasons that you would expect. I've been pretty fortunate for the most part that when traveling, and especially when solo traveling, I have mostly met nice people, and I enjoy having friendly conversations with other people, hearing about their trips, and sometimes kind of having like temporary travel buddies. That can always be nice. And then you run into people who are really helpful and nice, way nicer than they need to be. Recently I had an incident where my car was stuck in the snow at a trailhead, and the only other car there, the two other hikers came out of the trail. They very nicely spent a significant amount of time helping me push my car out of the parking lot. I was so grateful for their help. I would have been in trouble if it were not for them. I hope I can pay it forward for somebody else at some point. Occasionally you do run into somebody doing something inconsiderate, like playing a Bluetooth speaker on the trail at varying volumes. It's never a good idea to do that. People really like to experience peace and quiet and the sounds of nature on the trail, and it's one of the few opportunities that you get to do that, and Bluetooth speakers take that option away from other people. And then occasionally you run into somebody doing something stupid and dangerous. Today I hiked into the lava tube area because I had my car parked at one of the campsites that was a bit farther down, and I didn't want to lose the campsite, so I didn't drive in like most people do. I hiked to the tube, but most people do drive in because there's like that little parking area at the end. So while I was in the cave, I heard some other people approaching. I could hear their voices, and so I expected that they were probably gonna come down into the cave too, but they didn't. The voices got quieter. I think they went up to the stairs and then they walked away, so I thought they had left. And then I was standing in the area that was like the light beams and the holes, and all of a sudden I heard their voices really loudly at the holes, and rocks started coming down. I think they were speaking German, so it sounded like it was maybe some foreign tourists. They were throwing lots of rocks. I tried to yell up to them like, hey, somebody's down here, but I don't think they could hear me because it continued. I think maybe because of the shape of the cave, and also it's very windy on the surface today, maybe they couldn't hear me at all. So I stayed away from where the holes were. I was kind of standing in this area that was a bit more shielded, but then they went over to the other hole and started throwing some rocks down that one too. And I yelled again, but once again, I don't think they heard me. A large rock came down and bounced toward me. It was about the size of my foot. So that was like, I wasn't in danger, I think, of being directly hit because I was just staying away from the holes. as long as they were there. But it was still like, it was alarming, I have to say. And I'm really glad that I wasn't directly under the hole when they first started throwing the rocks. I think they assumed that nobody else was around because they didn't see another car parked at the parking lot. And I did intend to just like mention it to them when I came out, but they sped away in their cars before I got the chance. I think also the holes were fairly removed from where the stairs were, so they may not have realized that it all connected underneath, but still, it was not great. This is actually something that I've witnessed in other occasions too. So a couple different times when I've been rock climbing, and like I'm a very beginning level climber, like I do not climb anything too crazy, but even just like small rock walls, you would be surprised where like even when there's signage saying like climbers below, sometimes people just toss stuff over the cliff, or like they kick rocks. So I one time was climbing on a small wall and saw some other climbers next to me. A rock like the size of somebody's head came down and missed them by like a foot, and it had been kicked over the edge of the cliff by somebody up above. I don't think people are doing this maliciously. I think they just don't realize that people are down below, because climbing is a little bit of a weird sport, so it may not occur to people like, oh, there might be somebody down there, but they, you know, there is somebody down there. I had another climbing incident where a friend of mine was climbing and there were some people on top of this hill throwing like full water bottles down, and I was like screaming up at them to stop. I don't know if they could hear me, but it kept going. There was an infamous incident during which a real climber was killed while climbing in the Wind River Range. He was climbing with a friend on some rock face, and two young men were on a ridge up above, thought they were totally alone, decided it would be fun to roll some rocks over the side. One hit this man in the head and killed him. I have not personally witnessed this while being in the Grand Canyon, but every now and then you do see stories about somebody throwing rocks, or like somebody thinks it would be cute to hit a golf ball or a baseball over the rim. And I don't think these people realize that there's people below the rim. Like there's hiking trails, there's mule tours, people are doing all kinds of stuff down there, and it's really dangerous. I really hope that I don't get killed by a stupid golf ball at some point when I'm like hiking out the Bright Angel Trail someday. So in general, it's a good rule of thumb to just not throw rocks and like hit objects over cliffs or down caves or whatever. It may not appear that there are people nearby. You may not be aware of their presence, but there might be people there.